Welcome to the Blockcrunch podcast, the go-to podcast for investors and builders in crypto. And before we get started, just a reminder for you guys out there, the Blockcrunch podcast is intended for informational purposes only. Neither the host nor its guests are licensed financial advisors, and nothing discussed should be construed as financial advice. Views held by Blockcrunch's guests are their own, and sponsorship messages do not constitute financial advice or endorsement. With that out of the way, let's jump right in. Today's episode of the Blockcrunch podcast is brought to you by Protocol Labs, the team behind Filecoin. So to tell us a little bit more is Colin Efren, who leads ecosystem at Protocol Labs. So Colin, can you tell us what's one thing that people misunderstand about Filecoin the most?
One thing people don't realize is that the launch of smart contracts on Filecoin in Q1 of this year will transform the Filecoin network into the world's largest open data economy and a full-fledged layer one within Web3. Most people think of Filecoin as the world's largest decentralized storage network. And while that's true, the community onboarded 450 petabytes of real data in 2022, up 18 times from the beginning of last year. Q1 of this year is transformational. The community is launching the Filecoin virtual machine where users can start writing programs to automate storage and renewal of data, pay for computation, and trigger retrievals. All of which is built on a permissionless market of hardware providers that is 15 exabytes in size. This will open the world's largest data economy and make Filecoin one of the most powerful layer one blockchains in Web3.
Hello there. Now, before we move on, I'd love to thank the hundreds of you who have subscribed to Blockcrunch VIP, because with your support, I've been able to share my real thoughts on specific projects that I don't usually share on interviews in a format that I enjoy more, which is bi-weekly written posts. We've also been able to offer exclusive AMAs, sharing my investment frameworks, interactable models, and breaking down important trends before they become big. Now, we even had Elon Musk comment on one of our threads recently. So if you haven't already, head on over to theblockcrunch.com/VIP, and you can access dozens of hours of research for what you'd spend on a coffee a day. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Blockcrunch podcast. Now, to kick the new year off, we're going to explore crypto projects that are tackling real use cases that are really underexplored, as well as high-profile founders with unique worldviews. And our guest today, Ryan Breslow, fits both buckets. Ryan is the founder of Bolt, a payment startup that raised a $1 billion valuation in the middle of last year, which put Ryan as one of the youngest self-made billionaires on paper in the world. And today, Ryan is here to talk to you about his new venture, Love, which is a health-focused DAO that promises to let people vote on and fund pharmaceutical development and research. And Ryan also has an uncanny ability to fundraise. So we're going to dive into a few tips for founders in this challenging environment as well. So there's a lot of stuff to discuss. I'm really, really excited to have Ryan on the show. So welcome, man.
It's great to be here, Jason.
So let's just kick us off by your backstory, because it's a really, really interesting story. When I first started researching on you, Ryan, it was a lot to read, just given how many things you've done before, from Eco to Bolt to Love. So can you just walk us through your journey and how these things link together?
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I was very lucky to go to Stanford, had a professor named Balaji Srinivasan. Him and with a few other students, we started the Stanford Bitcoin group. And became obsessed. I caught the bug. I thought it would change everything and still do. And I ended up dropping out of school to focus just on crypto and build a crypto wallet, a hosted wallet for buying and selling Bitcoin. And my passion, probably long-term, one of my big dreams is to see everyone using crypto regularly. I realized that there were challenges in crypto user experience, but then I was like, why hasn't anyone solved regular payments experience challenges? And I'm like, why has no one built a checkout company? And so then I pivoted to Bolt to build this checkout company, because it was a little bit easier than all the regulation that came with the crypto idea. And just been working on Bolt. Ended up not being easy at all. It was a crazy ride. Had another idea around crypto usability, which turned into Eco, which I started on the side, brought on some of my best friends to run it and co-found it with me. And so that's how Eco came about. And then I'll tell you more about Love as well. But that's the journey in a nutshell.
Got it. That's awesome, man. And what I think is really interesting is that you started in crypto, you moved to payments, and now you're back to crypto. And specifically, you grew such a massive company at Bolt, and it was a lot. It was a massive company to kind of step away from. So I assume that there must be something very specific and urgent about crypto that pulled you back and convinced you to kind of make this massive move. So I'm curious, kind of what was that decision like, and what pulled you back into crypto?
Yeah, I mean, at Bolt, I was very lucky to have a COO who formerly ran all logistics and fulfillment at Amazon, US and global, and was just kind of schooling me every day on execution. And so I was, at one point I was like really had put everything I had into Bolt and needed a little bit of a break, and decided to promote Maju into the CEO role. And I see my job as hiring people who are smarter than me to put me out of a job. And so I was very lucky to put Maju in. CEO I trust completely. He's incredible. And that gave me a little bit of extra space to think about what I wanted to do next. And I had building all these companies was very stressful on my body. I developed chronic back pain in my early 20s, which no 20-year-old should ever have. Yeah. A few years ago, I got became celiac. And so I, realized that I'm not Superman, and these things that I'm doing where I'm stressed like every day really affected me physiologically, mentally. And I ended up, chronic back pain, for example, I ended up trying traditional doctors, hitting walls, getting worse, really impairing my ability to be social, to work, to go to a gym, and even to sleep. And so desperate, I went to somebody more of an alternative, really off the beaten path healer, who said, hey, your chronic back pain is because you're stressed and you're not handling it well. And so I took that seriously. I changed my whole life. I got into therapy, meditation, yoga, eating better, taking different supplements. Within 4 months, my back pain had healed. And so I was like, how many other people, I'm pretty privileged, Stanford, tech, really well-educated, etc., didn't know the first thing about health. How many other people are struggling with health and don't really know where to go and don't have access to these healers or different communities like I did? And so before I wanted to get back into crypto, it was actually an underlying passion that I wanted to help people on their healing journeys, just like I had been. And then I was like, how do we do that? And then the idea for the Love DAO and the crypto piece came into the fold.
And that is exactly what I wanted to talk about today. And I've always wanted to ask this next question in an interview, unironically, but what is love?
That's the question. I think it was John Lennon who says, love is love. So
that's right. That's
right. I think that's my answer. Love is love. And we picked the name because we want to build one of the most trusted, iconic brands in healing. Not health, because health has, I think, negative connotations. Love is healing. We're not going to be a company that's about illness or problems. We're going to be a company about solutions, well-being, healing, and loving your body. We will have a website and a marketplace as well, where we're going to source incredible products from around the world, not to heal this illness or that disorder, or it's going to be to love your mind, love your gut, love your, joints, love your back. So, our goal is to rethink healing purely from the standpoint of love.
That's amazing. And this is so interesting to me because it's very, very different from the hundreds of projects we've talked to. It's very different from everything we've talked to. We mostly talk to like DeFi projects or games or interesting kind of economic loops and so on. But this is the first time we've talked to a project that's specifically focused in health, treatment, pharmaceuticals, drugs and, healing. So I guess just to make this more concrete for our listeners, can you maybe walk us through an example of how a treatment or maybe a drug may get funded through the Love DAO?
Yes. So what we're doing first is we're launching a marketplace of products. So this will be the first one-stop shop for alternative health and wellness, where you can say, I want to love my back, I want to sleep better, I want to love my joints. And we'll show you products that are extremely kind of vetted, curated, where we've done homework, where we've had third parties audit the products so that just like walking into a Whole Foods or Sephora, that the products have a certain degree of vetting that has been done. And so first step is we're launching this marketplace of products, building this community of shoppers of these products, etc. And so there will be kind of that basic tier of vettedness. But then the next tier is, as certain products have a lot of attention, right? There's only so much vetting and reviews can do. Eventually, you need a clinical trial on the product to prove with a much higher degree of certainty efficacy of the product. Now, these clinical trials are expensive. In the alternative wellness space, they're not as expensive as traditional. We can get a clinical trial down to 80 to 100 grand instead of millions or tens of millions of dollars, but you still have to pull capital together in order to run that trial. And so that's when the Love DAO will launch, in order to allow the community to pull together funds. And, maybe Love sponsors a portion of it, and maybe the retailer or the brand who invented the product sponsors a portion of it. So the combination of community, love, and brand through buying token and crowdsourcing for a trial is the mechanism by which we can run and fund trials for alternative products. Why is this important? Well, in traditional pharma, which does work miracles and is very important, and I want to make clear my stance is never to discount the work that they do, but there's a lot of things they won't run trials on because it goes against their existing business, right? It kind of cannibalizes their existing business. So if you have a natural product that's non-patentable and it really helps somebody with their depression or their PTSD or whatever, it doesn't make a lot of business sense for their board to approve a trial on that, because if it works, they can't patent it and it's very cheap for consumers, and it's going to cannibalize another business line. So there's a whole ecosystem of natural remedies, herbal remedies, holistic medicine, homeopathic medicine, traditional indigenous medicine, traditional Eastern medicine that does need data. And to date, there's nobody to fund it.
Got it. And just to make sure I get this right, so basically there's a DAO where there is a love token and people purchase this token and deposit their, basically invest in this pooled funds. And with the token, they can basically vote on what type of health research they want to see. Is that kind of roughly the idea?
Exactly. They could vote on which remedies, which wellness products, which treatments they want to see funding go towards.
And is there anyone that will come and kind of shortlist the list of developments or shortlist the list of research or drugs before they get voted, or is it free for all? Like you can vote on anything?
Well, the DAO will be decentralized in nature, so anybody can submit a proposal to the DAO and say, "Hey, community, you should look at this." So it's really anything goes, and the community will vote. Love will be an active member of the community recommending things, and the Love Marketplace will show the empirical data of how many people are interested in which products, right? But yeah, eventually a community can vote on anything.
That's quite interesting. And I noticed that in the Love team, the early Love team consists of a lot of pharmaceutical veterans. So I'm assuming at least a part of the strategy will focus on, actual drugs in the future. And I'm really curious about this because, drug development always seems to incur decades worth of, regulatory hurdles and billions in R&D before anything comes through. So why did you decide to kind of assemble this team and also to have this focus on drugs as well?
Well, I think it's important to not discount the existing scientific world if we want to create a new world. We have to bridge the two. And so we have an amazing scientific advisory board with the Dean of Precision Medicine at Mount Sinai and Dean of Digestive Diseases at UCLA and head of effectively microbiome at UPenn, and the list goes on. So we're kind of bringing the best of the best from the old world, who also think progressively and can help advise us on the new world. And we also have plenty of folks in our community who are just new world too. And so the idea is to kind of bring the best and brightest who are passionate about this concept of love and this progressive way of thinking about medicine and healing, all into the same community.
And I think specifically, you also mentioned things like, therapies, meditation, even breath work or plant medicines as the first initiatives in the tweet thread that you announced Loved in. So I'm very curious, why did you pick those as your initial go-to market? Is it because they're not usually funded by basically anyone, and this is the gap to fill?
Yeah, I mean, it won't be exclusively those, but those are definitely strong candidates. Why are they a strong candidate? Well, they have incredible healing ability and they can't be patented, right? And so there's a great book called Breathe, New York Times bestseller. And the book is all about basically how breath can heal anything. It compiles all of this research around how breath has been used to heal really serious illness, disease, cancer, broken bones. I mean, breath is really powerful, but imagine how anti-business that is. Because if you could heal these major illnesses, diseases, etc., just with your breath, there's no one to profit. And so, these are the well-kept secrets that business don't want you to know about, but as a crypto community, the people want to know, right? The people want to know, is this BS or is this actually real? Because if it's real, it's going to save them a whole lot of money.
And I guess to do this at scale, there needs to be some sort of economic incentive as well for people who are investing in the DAO. So I guess in terms of translating the outcome of this research into some form of upside for investors in the DAO, how does that look like?
So that initially, there's going to be no promise of upside. We look at this as an impact DAO. So you put your money here in order to have impact. Eventually, I mean, we're likely going to be launching with a bonding curve. So there will be a finite supply of token. It will cost more to buy every incremental token. And so hypothetically, if things work, the token can become kind of more scarce or more expensive to buy, and your token could go up. However, we don't exactly know. I mean, there's no precedent for impact DAOs turning into profits. So we kind of disclose that, hey, you should primarily be investing for impact.
And in terms of the execution of the actual research and development side, who will be conducting that? Is it the Love team itself, or?
We are building an amazing ecosystem. So we actually have some core vetting partners where, in order to be vetted and land a position in the Love marketplace, you have to pass a certain level of vetting that we share with our community, basically like a Love certified, with multiple third parties who have vetted the product. And so, yeah, we use a combination of in-house expertise, such as the folks that I mentioned and others who are on our full-time Love team, and then outside third parties. There's a big revolution happening right now with eventually certification in this space. So if you walk into a Whole Foods, right, you have non-GMO, organic, all the badges, right? Fair trade, and ethically sourced, and all these badges that help a consumer understand, how where the products were sourced. That doesn't exist as much in a digital world, and especially in the alternative health and wellness world. So we're thinking through, how do you create these standards to give users some more confidence in what they're buying.
That's quite interesting, because initially when I first saw the idea, I assumed that it was funding development or research into certain treatments that are not funded elsewhere. And then hopefully once you get the initial data set and once you get the initial mind share, you can push it off to be certified by the FDA or whatever agency actually gives them the certification. But here it sounds like you are actually trying to establish your own type of certification outside of the confines of the existing ones, right?
Exactly. It's about bridging the gap. FDA, like running an FDA grade clinical trial, being able to make certified claims around healing is very expensive. And that's kind of, there's probably very few alternative products that will make it to that stage. Right. But then what about everything else? So, there should be some, basic vetting, right? We're not going to make a claim that this heals you, but we can say the ingredients are what they say it is. And here is some preliminary data on efficacy. And here is some, here's our thoughts on safety, right? From what we can gather. And then there should be, community reviews where identity verified people have used it and they submit, how good it's been for them. And then there's lightweight clinical trials, and then there's FDA full-blown clinical trials. So that's kind of, a much more expensive later step, but there also needs to be filling in of the gap. So ever since, I stepped in as CEO of Love several months ago. So it's not like I've been working on this for years. I'm just now wrapping my head around. I was a board member before, and now I've basically become so passionate, I decided to step in as CEO. And so there's a lot changing in real time. Before it was kind of just the DAO, and we're going to do these pharmaceutical programs as well. Now I've reshuffled some of the steps, right? So first is launch a marketplace of vetted products, see what consumers are interested, introduce community reviews, introduce different levels of vetting, right? And really attract a wide swath of audience of people who are interested in alternative health products and wellness products. And then once that flywheel gets going, then introduce clinical trials, introduce the DAO, introduce more and more layers.
Got it. And when I first saw the idea for Love, I immediately thought of like, what is the relationship between Love and like more controversial types of treatments like psychedelics, or I guess cannabis is not as controversial in the States now, but it's still very much, taboo in Asia. So when it comes to like more kind of, I guess, controversial types of treatments, how do you view Love's relationship? Is Love's, I guess, mission to maybe empower some of those things that are, I guess, in other cases frowned upon, or would you kind of stay away from those as well?
Well, love, you asked the question, what is love? Love is love. If something can heal somebody, we don't come into this with any dogma. We don't come into this with bias, saying, hey, we think these are the things that heal versus others. And so we're really like, let the community decide, right? We'll do some degree of vetting to make sure that real low quality products don't kind of make it above the fold. But otherwise, we'll have community reviews. You'll earn points and or potentially tokens down the line for submitting high fidelity reviews on your experience with the thing. And, they'll be upvoting on products and stuff like that. So we see ourselves more as a platform, providing vetting, providing community functionality, providing crowdsourcing tools versus the decider of what is right or what is wrong.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And on this point about a DAO as well, I've always thought that DAOs are really great for things like products, like with a DAO running Maker or DAO running whatever DeFi primitive out there, and best for short-term things, kind of almost like SPACs or SPVs, because of how difficult it was to maintain the attention of people if they're just like decentralized coordinators and not full-time employees in a company. So obviously you don't seem to fully agree with this premise. So I'm curious, like, why do you think a DAO is the best way to achieve funding these kind of alternative medicine or treatments?
It's a good question. I think, a DAO is kind of instantly global. You can instantly, raise money and also attract a community of followers on a global scale overnight. And, myself running a payments company, doing that in a traditional payments is very, very, very difficult and would take many years and, millions or tens of millions of dollars to build towards that. So a DAO, we have access to the whole world overnight. I think that's point number one. Point number two is you give something back to the person. If you're launching a Kickstarter, like you're buying a product potentially, but you're not becoming a part or a member of anything. If you participate in the DAO, you get Love token, right? And that Love token may give you access to events. It may give you discounts on products. It may give you membership, access to different things. And so, by participating, you become a member, and that's also really valuable. I think a Kickstarter is valuable for kind of a single point in time type of fundraiser. A DAO is valuable for something that's more of a movement, where everyone who contributes becomes a member, has votes, can elect officials who make decisions over ongoing governance. So yeah, I think there's kind of nothing that's comparable to a DAO for decentralized, global, ongoing governance and community.
And just to get a sense of the sheer kind of immensity of the task, how much money does this DAO really need to kind of get started with funding, say, like the first 10 research? Are we talking about, $10 million, $100 million? Because I have no idea how expensive it is to fund this type of alternative medicine research.
Yeah, we're modeling that right now. The short answer is I don't know right now. We've recently kind of had a breakthrough where we can run these early phase clinical trials much more cheaply than we thought. And, so listen, we're going to try to see how much we can get done with the least amount of money possible, right? With low millions of dollars, what is possible? And I think we're still in the discovery phase there.
Got it. Well, I'm really excited to keep up to date with how that turns out as well. And I'm also curious in terms of how Love fits in with the rest of crypto. Are there opportunities for Love to plug into, DeFi or like metaverses or NFT projects, other DAOs? Have you thought about how, what Love's place is in crypto? Or is this supposed to be a pretty kind of, I guess, insular use case that's only focused on, health?
Well, I think it's, time will tell, but I think there's a lot of application. Health is a pretty foundational thing. So whether other projects want to have a health component, Love can be kind of an impact sidecar to different projects, or say, hey, we're raising and a portion of money raised goes towards health research. So Love could kind of be like a, top up type thing, top up to with crypto to push humanity's healing forward, type of thing. And then I'm sure there's other crazy things we could do down the line with like health insurance and, all of that. But yeah, I could easily go crazy with the ideas, but now that I'm CEO, it's like, I got to figure out, the bite-sized next steps. And, that's what I'm doing. So we're starting small and focused. The marketplace will lead up to the DAO, and then we'll lead to hopefully a lot more exciting things after that.
Definitely. And I think that's a great note to pivot to the final part of the interview, which is more about picking your brain about advice for founders out there. I'm really curious, first of all, what was the experience of running a company like Bolt like, and how is it different from running a DAO?
Well, it's extremely different. Running a Web2 company where it's very heavy on engineering and sales, right? So, basically what my job is in Bolt is building great software and selling it. With a DAO, you don't have that many people building software. And there's not really a selling motion. Selling kind of happens automatically. So you're much more a community leader than a traditional Web2 executive. And it's just so different. You're making sure the community mojo is intact. You're making sure that, community understands vision. You're keeping it fun. You're keeping it engaging. And those things happen within the walls of a company like Bolt as well. You do offsites and you have kind of fun rooms over your Slack, and you keep it fun as well. But yeah, it's a business, and a DAO is a community.
Yeah, and I always thought that running a startup is operating a company, but running a DAO probably has more similarities with running a fund than a company. You're running a fund where your LPs is everybody who wants to come into the DAO. So I imagine it's a really different experience. And speaking of funds as well, one of the questions that I get asked most in the past 6 months, every time I talk to a founder in a seed round, is how do you raise money? And I think in one of your books, you mentioned that fundraising is all about momentum. And I think one of the most cited things about your achievements at Bolt was that how you guys raised, I think, almost $400 million at a 40 million revenue, which was an insane multiple and a crazy feat in and of itself. So I'm curious, what advice you have for crypto projects that are out there, especially those with more experimental business models that might not be able to monetize in the short term. How can they go out and raise money in this environment?
Yeah, so I can't comment on Bolt's revenue. We keep that confidential. But what I can say is there's a lot of substance behind our raises between things like revenue, but also signed contracts of things rolling out soon, right? And so the best way to raise money is to have a great business. That's the easiest way, right? And then there are things that you can do to optimize the raise and raise at potentially more money and a higher valuation than someone that hasn't run a good process. So there's your underlying business, and then there's your process, right? A great process will never compensate for not a great business, or in the seed stages, you don't need a great business, but you need a really strong idea and story. And so specifically for seed raising, I wrote a book called Fundraising, find on Amazon, Fundraising by Brian Breslow. And I didn't write this to sell books. I wrote this because I had an incessant stream of founders reaching out to me to help with fundraising because I'd done fundraising talks in the early days. And so people kind of knew me around good coaching for fundraising. So I eventually wrote a Google Doc, and I'm like, here's everything I'm going to tell you on a call. Just read it. And then I added more and more to the doc, and it kind of became this like secret weapon for his community of founders. Like, I have access to Ryan's doc. And then I was eventually like, more and more people were calling me for access to the doc. I'm like, all right, I believe in democratizing knowledge. This shouldn't be a secret playbook. I'm just going to turn it into a book. It's good for my brand too, but more importantly, it gets the information out there for everybody. So the fundraising book is not a pithy book. It's not like a fluffy, it's like the real deal. This is the playbook that was the Bible for me and for hundreds of founders who are my close friends. And I have no fluff words. There's not an extra page. It doesn't need to be there. It kind of gives you exactly what the basics of what you need to run a good fundraising process.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to link to that book below. For all the founders that are reaching out, I'm pretty sure Ryan probably has a lot more sound advice than I can offer at this point, given that he's done so much of this. And for the final question, I want to bring it back to Love. So in the coming year, given that we're in the beginning of the year, what are the biggest milestones that people can look forward to seeing from Love?
We will be launching some Web 2 products first. So a community product, the marketplace. And then, after that hits a certain level of traction, then the Web3 gets layered on. So look out for some Web2 launches, even though this is mostly a Web3 community. I think great companies bridge the two. Eco, my other company I started, has an amazing Eco wallet that is largely Web2. Right now has launched a token in parallel, has a crazy fan base and community, and the two play nicely with each other. So yeah, look out for some community products where you can kind of participate and get involved in health discussion, and also marketplace coming out in the next few months.
Definitely. And finally, for people who want to keep up to date with Love or keep up to date with you, what are the best channels for them to do this?
You could follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Ryan Takes Off. Love has a wait list. Sign up for the wait list on love.com. And I think that's it for now.
Awesome.
And then stay tuned.
Definitely. I'll keep those in the show notes below as well. And once again, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. This has been one of the most interesting episodes we've done.
Awesome, Jason. Well, it's a pleasure being here. And great discussion.
All right, that's it for this week's episode of the Blockcrunch podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe on your favorite apps. And in case you didn't know, this interview is also available as a video on YouTube. And if you tag the Blockcrunch on Twitter this week and tell us what you liked about this episode, I'll be sure to respond to you as well. Now, if you'd like to go even deeper, we have a VIP tier where every week or so, we write an in-depth research brief or investment memo on a project. And we'll have exclusive AMAs with myself where I answer all your questions as well. Now, we already have analysts from some of the top funds and companies in crypto as subscribers. So if you're serious about getting an edge in crypto, head on over to theblockcrunch.com/VIP to learn more. And once again, thanks for supporting the show, and I'll see you next week.